Jess never meant to eavesdrop. It was a dropped call, an accident, the kind of thing that happens all the time. But what she heard that evening, when her friend Amelia forgot to press the end button, would alter the way she viewed their friendship forever. Because some truths don't whisper, they rip through silence like thunder. Jess had always believed that friendship, real friendship, could weather storms, even the silent ones. She and Amelia had shared years of laughter, late-night tears, inside jokes, and quiet reassurances that no matter how cruel the world got, they had each other. But what if one person only felt the bond while the other felt burdened? What if the hand you were holding was only pretending to hold back? Sometimes, the sharpest betrayals don't come from enemies. They come from the ones you never questioned. What would you do if you overheard your best friend betraying you in the most casual, careless way, with no idea you were listening? Would you confront them? Cut them off? Or let the silence grow heavier with every passing day? This story isn't just about betrayal. It's about what happens after. Because when the truth slips out by accident, nothing stays the same. Make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because this isn't just a story. It's a mirror. It was a slow, golden Sunday evening, the kind where the light slants just right and the house feels unusually quiet. Jess curled up on the couch in her oversized hoodie, her hands wrapped around a warm cup of cocoa. Her cat, Miso, was asleep by her feet. The calm was familiar and welcome, until her phone buzzed to life with a call from Amelia. Jess smiled and picked up. "About time," she teased, bringing the phone to her ear. "I thought you ghosted me again." "I would never," Amelia replied with a soft laugh. "I mean, maybe if you stop sharing cake recipes with me, then we might have a problem." Jess chuckled. "So this is about dessert again, huh?" "I've been craving that chocolate fudge cake you made last month. I need the recipe. Badly." They fell into the kind of easy conversation that 15 years of friendship made effortless. They talked about Amelia's work-from-home stress, the weird pigeon that kept attacking Jess's kitchen window, and Derek, Amelia's husband. "He's planning something for our anniversary," Amelia said, stirring her tea on the other end of the line. "But I don't know if I should be excited or nervous." Jess frowned slightly. "Why nervous? Isn't it supposed to be a happy thing?" "I don't know. It's just, lately, it feels like we're roommates more than anything. Or worse, business partners." Jess hesitated. She'd always kept her opinions about Derek to herself, but something about Amelia's tone made her chest feel tight. "Maybe you two just need a proper weekend away," Jess offered. "No phones. No responsibilities." "Maybe," Amelia said, though the word was hollow. Then she brightened up again. "Anyway. Cake. Focus, Jess. Chocolate. I've already gotten the butter out." Jess laughed and launched into the steps for the cake. Amelia scrambled for a pen, rustling around somewhere off-screen. Jess could hear drawers opening and a soft grunt of annoyance. Okay. Got it," Amelia called out. "Hit me." 1 cup of flour, 3 eggs, half a cup of cocoa powder. "Wait, is that sifted cocoa or, hang on, I should write this down." "Just a sec." There was a short pause as Amelia seemed to set her phone down. Jess assumed the call had ended, probably one of those accidental disconnections. She leaned back, took a sip of her cocoa, and picked up her TV remote. Then she heard a voice. It wasn't Amelia's. "She's so pathetic," the voice said. "Male. Cold. Honestly, the way she clings to people is exhausting." Jess froze, the warmth draining from her fingers. "That girl Jess? I pity her." You can hear it in her voice. "Always talking to you like you're her personal rescue project." The room went still. Was this Derek? Jess stared at the phone. The call hadn't disconnected. She should have hung up. Should have clicked end and pretended she didn't hear anything. But her hand wouldn't move. She's so desperate for validation. She even clings to you like you're some kind of savior. It's pathetic. Jess was more confused than she'd ever been in her entire life. She sticks around to feel better about her own life. There was a long, painful pause. Then another voice came through, softer, almost trembling. Maybe you're right, Amelia whispered. Jess's entire body stiffened. She felt like she'd been slapped. The breath left her lungs in one long, stunned exhale. She'd just heard her best friend, her sister in all but blood, agree with a man who had reduced their friendship to a charity case. The words echoed in her mind like a cruel chant, maybe you're right. She didn't even realize she was crying until a tear slid off her jawline and dropped onto her sweatshirt. Jess finally pressed the red end button with shaking fingers. The silence that followed was deafening. Her heart thudded like a drum in her ears. She wanted to call back. She wanted to scream. But most of all, she wanted to disappear into the floor and never come back up. That call, the one that should have ended with chocolate cake and laughter, had changed everything. And deep down, Jess knew nothing between her and Amelia would ever be the same again. She lay in bed with her eyes wide open, staring at the faint glow of the ceiling light bleeding through her curtains. Her phone rested on the pillow beside her, like a poisonous thing she couldn't quite push away. The screen was black, but the words still echoed in her head. That girl Jess? I pity her. She sticks around to feel better about her own life. Maybe you're right. Each phrase cut deeper than the last. Jess hadn't told anyone, not yet. Not her sister, not her coworker Zara, not even Marcus, the ex she still talked to sometimes in moments of weakness. There was a strange shame in it, like she had stumbled into a room she was never meant to see, and now she couldn't unsee what had always been hidden in plain sight. By morning, the sun filtered into her bedroom like nothing had changed. The kettle whistled. Her cat meowed at the same exact time it always did. But Jess had changed. And no amount of cocoa, music, or yoga stretches could make her feel normal again. When her phone buzzed with a text from Amelia at 9:06 a.m., her stomach twisted. Amelia. Hey babe. Totally forgot to save the measurements for the cake. You said 3 eggs, right? Jess stared at the screen, rereading it 5 times. The tone was so casual, so breezy, like nothing had happened. Like Amelia hadn't just quietly co-signed a conversation that painted Jess as a pity friend. As someone who clung to their relationship out of moral superiority. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. 3 eggs. 1 cup of sugar. Half a cup of cocoa. She could just reply, pretend everything was fine. She could sweep it under the rug, smile through it, and go on with life like most people did. But something in her wouldn't let her. Instead, she tossed the phone face down onto the couch and walked into the kitchen. Her hands trembled as she pulled a mug from the shelf. The memory of Amelia's voice saying, maybe you're right, looped again. Was she always pretending with me? Was I the only one who thought this friendship meant something real? Later that afternoon, she found herself scrolling through old pictures. Selfies from movie nights. Dinner table chaos from Amelia's last birthday. Voice notes from 3 years ago, where Amelia had sobbed after her miscarriage and Jess had stayed on the phone for 4 hours straight. That version of Amelia had needed her. That version of Amelia had loved her, hadn't she? Jess didn't realize she was crying until she tasted the salt on her lips. At around 3 p.m., Jess finally answered Amelia's text. Jess. Yeah. 3 eggs. Use warm butter, not melted. Nothing else. No emojis. No jokes. No how's Derek? Amelia replied a few minutes later with a heart and a gif of someone dancing with a chocolate cake. Jess didn't respond. By Thursday, Jess had avoided picking up any of Amelia's calls. There had been 2. Then 3. Then a text. Amelia. Hey, are you mad at me? Jess didn't reply. Not because she wanted to ghost her, but because she didn't know how to respond. What was the protocol for finding out your best friend thought you were a burden? That your friendship was a charity act in her husband's eyes, and she didn't even defend you? What was the right way to say, I heard everything. And I don't think I'll ever see you the same way again. The next Saturday, Jess was at her local cafe working on her freelance blog post when she saw them. Amelia and Derek. They were standing outside the cafe, waiting for their drinks from the pickup window. Derek had his hand on Amelia's lower back, and she was laughing. Not the giggle she gave when she was nervous. It was real laughter, the kind Jess hadn't seen from her in months. She hadn't planned to look up. But she did. And the moment Amelia spotted her through the window, their eyes locked. Amelia's smile faltered. Jess watched as Amelia whispered something to Derek and quickly pushed through the door into the cafe, walking toward her. Jess, she said, breathless, as she reached the table. Hey. I've been calling you all week. Jess closed her laptop slowly. I know. Amelia looked confused. Nervous. Are you okay? Did I do something? Jess studied her face. Those familiar brown eyes, the slight dimple on the left cheek, the nervous finger twisting she did when she felt cornered. For a moment, Jess considered pretending again. But pretending was what got her here in the first place. You forgot to end the call on Sunday, Jess said quietly. Amelia blinked. What? You put your phone down, but it never disconnected. I heard everything. Her face went pale. Slowly, she sat down. Jess, I pity her. She clings to you like a savior. That's what Derek said, Jess continued, her voice flat. And then you said, maybe you're right. Amelia's mouth opened. Closed. She looked like she'd been punched. I didn't mean it like that, she said weakly. It was just. I was trying to keep the peace. You know how Derek gets. Jess laughed, but it sounded hollow. So you chose peace over truth? It wasn't like that, Amelia insisted. He was in a mood, and I didn't want to fight. I just said it to end the conversation. I didn't think. No. You didn't, Jess said, standing. You didn't think I'd hear it. That's the difference. Amelia reached for her hand. Jess, please. You know I love you. You're my person. Am I? Jess asked, voice shaking. Because it sounded a lot like I'm your project. Derek came in just then, holding their drinks. His eyes shifted from Jess to Amelia, confusion evident. Everything okay? Jess didn't look at him. She grabbed her bag, slung it over her shoulder, and turned back to Amelia one last time. Sometimes, she said softly, you hear the truth by accident. But once you do, you can't unhear it. And with that, she walked out. Jess didn't cry after walking out of the cafe. She had braced herself for the emotional tailspin. But there were no tears. No shaky breaths. Just a calm, deliberate silence, like the kind that blankets a room after a thunderstorm has passed and all that's left is broken branches. It wasn't peace. It was detachment. By the time she got home, the voicemail notifications had already started. Amelia's voice filled her inbox with apologies wrapped in self-defense, layered with the kinds of I didn't mean it that people say when they get caught, not when they're sorry. Jess played none of them. Instead, she went through her closet, pulling out every object that screamed of Amelia, the cardigan she borrowed and never returned, the picture frame they bought together at that overpriced flea market, even the friendship bracelet from their trip to Lagos 3 years ago. One by one, she tossed them into a shoebox. She didn't burn it. That would have felt theatrical. She just shoved the box into the farthest corner of her closet and shut the door like she was sealing away a ghost. The days that followed moved slowly, awkward, like learning to walk with a limp. Jess filled her time with work, rearranging her apartment, and volunteering for extra shifts at the shelter where she taught art to kids. Anything to avoid the empty space where Amelia's presence used to be. But silence has a way of baiting chaos. A week later, the storm found her anyway. It came in the form of a private message from a woman named Lydia. Someone Jess didn't know. Lydia Martins, "Hey Jess. You don't know me, but I thought you should be aware. I saw something and it didn't sit right with me. Are you still friends with Amelia Harper?" Jess stared at the message, heart suddenly pounding. She debated ignoring it. The last thing she needed was more drama from people she didn't even know. But something about the message, the hesitance in its tone, kept her finger hovering over the reply button. She finally typed. "Jess, we're not really speaking." "Why?" The typing bubble appeared almost instantly. Then Lydia sent a screenshot. It was from a Facebook group called Married But Miserable, a private support forum for women dealing with toxic partners. The post was anonymous, but the writing was unmistakable. "I have a best friend who's sweet but completely unaware of how much of a burden she is. I've stayed friends out of guilt, but lately, I feel like I'm suffocating. My husband says she only hangs around because it makes her feel useful. Sometimes I think he's right. Is it wrong to want distance? Is it wrong to outgrow a friendship when the other person still needs you more than you need them?" Jess's heart dropped. It wasn't just the words. It was the timeline. The post was made 2 weeks before the phone call. 2 weeks before the comment she overheard. This wasn't a one-time mistake. It was a pattern. She sat frozen for a long time, rereading the paragraph again and again. Her stomach churned. All those late-night calls. All the hand-holding. The emotional labor she'd offered freely and loyally, had it all been resented in silence? She replied. "Jess, thank you, Lydia. I needed to see that." Lydia responded. "I debated sending it. But I figured, if it were me, I'd want to know." That night, Jess stood in front of her bathroom mirror, studying herself the way you might study someone you're just meeting for the first time. Her reflection stared back with weary eyes and clenched shoulders. Why was it that betrayal made you question yourself more than the betrayer? Had she really been too much? Too giving? Too emotional? Was it so wrong to be someone who cared deeply? As she brushed her hair back, her phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Amelia. It was Derek. She nearly dropped the phone. "Derek, I think you and Amelia need to talk. This has gotten ridiculous. Whatever you think you heard was taken out of context. Don't throw away a friendship over my words." Jess's jaw clenched. She didn't reply. But for the first time, she realized something important. Derek was the rot beneath the floorboards, not just the man beside Amelia. He wasn't just rude. He was manipulative. Always subtly steering things, always twisting loyalty into pity and compassion into weakness. Amelia had absorbed it. And Jess? Jess had been collateral damage. By the following week, something inside her shifted. She blocked Derek's number. Removed Amelia from close friends lists. Archived pictures. Disabled memories. It wasn't anger anymore, it was clarity. Ghosting isn't petty when it protects your peace. Sometimes, walking away in silence is the loudest statement you can make. She didn't need to scream to be heard. She didn't need an audience to feel valid. She just needed to heal. And healing required distance. But just when she thought the story was done, the real twist came. A knock on her door at 10:17 p.m. She almost didn't answer. She rarely got visitors that late. But something, curiosity, dread, unfinished business, pulled her to the door. When she opened it, her breath caught. It wasn't Amelia. It was Derek. The knock at the door had been a warning. Jess just didn't recognize it in time. There stood Derek Harper, dressed in a fitted charcoal jacket, clean-shaven, and annoyingly composed, as if he hadn't helped unravel a decades-long friendship with a careless mouth and a sharper ego. Jess stared at him, unsure whether to slam the door or demand an explanation. Her pulse was loud in her ears. Not from fear. From fury held on a tight leash. Jess, he said, giving her that performative smile he reserved for brunches and board meetings. I figured we should talk. She blinked, lips parting in disbelief. You figured wrong. Derek glanced over his shoulder, as if to ensure no one was watching, then returned his gaze to her. Look, I know I caught you off guard. But I wouldn't be here if it wasn't important. Jess didn't budge. Where's Amelia? She doesn't know I'm here. That did it. Jess stepped outside, closed the door gently behind her, and folded her arms. You have 5 minutes, she said, her tone as cold as the breeze rustling the neighbor's wind chimes. Start talking. Derek took a deep breath, as if preparing for a speech. I know I said some messed up things. I won't insult you by pretending I didn't. But, you should understand where I was coming from. Amelia was spiraling. You were around a lot. It started to feel like you were her crutch. Jess scoffed. A crutch? You mean support? Help? Friendship? Derek raised a hand. I'm not saying you were the problem. I'm saying she started depending on you in ways that made her resent you. And I was just trying to get her to see it. By convincing her I'm pathetic? He looked away. It wasn't about you, Jess. It was about her. I was trying to create space for our marriage. Jess tilted her head, her voice dangerously calm. Do you always build your marriage by tearing someone else down? There was a pause. Then, to her utter surprise, Derek's expression shifted. He wasn't smug now. He wasn't even defensive. He looked defeated. She almost left me last year. Jess blinked. What? Amelia, he said, rubbing the back of his neck. She packed a bag. Said she was going to your place. She didn't even tell me what I did. Just said she was tired of pretending. Jess felt her stomach twist. She never showed up, he continued. Said she changed her mind on the way. But I knew something shifted after that. And when she leaned into you again, into your friendship, I guess. I got jealous. Jess stared at him, stunned. You're not her therapist, Jess, Derek went on. But you gave her what I couldn't. And instead of appreciating that, I saw you as the enemy. So yeah. I said things I shouldn't have. I let her say them, too. Because it was easier to paint you as the problem than admit I was the one failing her. The silence between them thickened. Jess didn't know whether to scream or feel sorry for him. I know this doesn't fix anything, he added. But I didn't come to clear my name. I came because I think you deserve to know the whole picture. She left yesterday, he said quietly. Took the car and drove to her sister's in Florida. She said she needed time. That she couldn't be in a house where loyalty meant so little. Jess felt her breath leave her body. Turns out, Derek said, almost bitterly, she was listening to you all these years. She just needed to lose both of us to realize it. Jess turned away, struggling to process the chaos unraveling at her feet. He had come here to confess. Not to rebuild. Not to blame. Just to put everything on the table, and maybe leave a piece of his guilt behind with her. When she turned back to him, her voice was firmer than she felt. You're right about one thing, Derek. I'm not her therapist. I was her friend. A good one. And I don't know what kind of twisted logic you used to poison that, but you need to sit with that weight yourself. Don't hand it to me. He nodded once, slowly, like he understood he had reached the end of the road. Then he did something Jess didn't expect. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. She asked me to give you this. Before she left. He handed it to her, then turned and walked down the steps without another word. Jess waited until his car disappeared from view before looking at the envelope. It had her name on it. Just 5 letters, written in Amelia's familiar looping cursive. But it felt heavier than it should have. She held it for a long time before going back inside. She didn't open it right away. She sat on her couch, placed the envelope on the table, and stared at it like it might detonate. Her thoughts churned, a storm of memories, words, and possibilities. Finally, she unfolded the flap and pulled out a single sheet of paper. It wasn't long. But every word sliced her open in a different place. Jess. I don't know how to make this right, so I won't try to sound perfect. I heard myself that night, on the call you accidentally caught. And I was disgusted. Not by what I said, but by the fact that I didn't defend you. That I let someone diminish you while you weren't there to fight back. You've never needed me. I needed you. I always did. But I made the mistake of that into shame instead of gratitude. If you never forgive me, I'll understand. If this is goodbye, I'll carry it. But I wanted you to know. I left him. Not for you. For myself. But also, because I finally realized who wasn't the burden in my life. I hope you heal, even if I can't be part of that journey anymore. A. Jess folded the letter gently. She didn't cry. Not yet. She didn't scream, didn't shake. Instead, she walked to the window, looked out at the quiet street, and whispered to no one in particular. Sometimes you lose people, and still win. Jess didn't reply to the letter. Not because she didn't have anything to say, oh, she had plenty to say. Words that danced between bitterness and heartbreak, between how could you, and I still miss you anyway. But some things, Jess realized, were better left unsaid. Sometimes silence wasn't weakness. It was wisdom. The kind that came after surviving betrayal and still managing to look in the mirror without flinching. The kind that whispered, you don't need to win the argument to walk away with your dignity intact. Weeks passed. Life began filling in the gaps Amelia had once occupied. Jess started going to yoga again, not because she was trying to find herself, but because for the first time, the quiet no longer felt so loud. She picked up her brushes too, painting at night with soft jazz playing and the windows open, as if trying to let the pain float out and find its way into the stars. One Saturday afternoon, while refilling her shopping cart at a bookstore cafe, she caught a glimpse of a new novel by her favorite author. She smiled. Amelia used to steal her copies and bend the pages. Now Jess bought two. One for her shelf. And one to donate. Like offering a goodbye without needing a response. But closure? Closure came where she least expected it. It was a community center event, a spring fundraiser for the art shelter she volunteered with. Jess had offered to do a short talk on using creativity as therapy. She hadn't expected a huge turnout. What she hadn't expected at all was to see Lydia Martin sitting in the back row. Jess recognized her instantly. She saw her profile picture from that day. The woman who sent the anonymous post that changed everything. She was younger than Jess had pictured. Barefaced, with long curls tied into a loose bun and a nervous smile tugging at her lips. After the event, as people milled about drinking juice and nibbling cupcakes, Lydia approached her. Hey, she said gently. I don't know if you remember me. Jess laughed softly. You're the reason I didn't gaslight myself. Lydia flushed. I didn't know how you'd take it, but something told me you deserved the truth. Jess nodded. Thank you. It hurt. But it was honest. And that's more than I can say for people I knew for 10 years. Lydia hesitated. Can I be honest again? Please. She glanced around, then leaned in a little closer. I was once the Amelia in someone else's life. Jess blinked. I had a best friend who loved me endlessly, Lydia continued. And I let her carry my baggage until her hands bled. When she finally dropped it and walked away, I blamed her instead of looking at my mess. Years later, I realized I'd become someone I couldn't even respect. Jess stared at her, the weight of Lydia's admission sinking in. That's why I recognized Amelia's post, Lydia finished. Because I saw my old self in every sentence. They stood in silence for a beat, two women tethered by different ends of the same story. Jess didn't say it's okay. Because it wasn't. She didn't say, "I forgive her." Because she wasn't sure she did. What she said was more important. "I'm not angry anymore." And that's enough. Later that night, Jess found herself walking by the cafe where it all went down, the same one where Amelia had sipped her overpriced vanilla latte while tearing her down with soft, backhanded cruelty. The cafe lights glowed warm, like nothing bad had ever happened there. She stood outside for a while, watching strangers laugh over coffee, students hunch over laptops, lovers holding hands across wobbly tables. The world had moved on. And so had she. Not because she got the apology she deserved. Not because the letter fixed the past. But because she no longer needed anyone to validate her pain for it to be real. She had survived disappointment, guilt, silence, and betrayal, and still made space in her heart to be gentle with herself. That, she realized, was the real triumph. A month later, Jess changed her number. Not to disappear, but to reclaim her space. She didn't announce it. Didn't leave a cryptic status update or post some aesthetic quote about new beginnings. She just shifted. Quietly. Powerfully. Amelia never reached out again. Derek never resurfaced. And for once, Jess didn't wonder if they ever would. Because maybe some stories don't need dramatic goodbyes. Maybe some endings are better without applause. Maybe healing looks like learning to carry the scar without picking at the wound. One afternoon, while walking through a weekend street market, Jess saw a hand-painted mug that read, "You were never too much. They were just never enough." She bought it without hesitation. And that night, sipping tea from her new mug, windows open, candles lit, and jazz humming in the background, Jess finally understood what peace felt like. Not a loud celebration. But a soft, steady breath. The kind that whispers. You survived. And you're still soft. Still standing. Still you. The truth is, betrayal rarely comes from strangers. It comes from the people who sat beside us, held our secrets, shared our laughter, and memorized our pain. Jess didn't just lose a friend. She lost a version of herself, the one that believed loyalty could protect you from cruelty, or that history could save you from heartbreak. But in that loss, she found something more valuable: clarity. She saw that not all love is kind. Not all apologies are sincere. And not all closures are handed to you neatly with a bow. Sometimes, you create your own closure, in the silence that follows, in the boundaries you rebuild, and in the peace you earn. Jess never got a perfect ending. She got a real one. And maybe, just maybe, that was better. Have you ever overheard the truth about yourself, the kind that shifted everything you thought was real? Was it a friend's lie, a partner's secret, or something unspoken you were never meant to hear? Share your story in the comments. If this story gripped your heart, made you angry, made you think, or made you feel seen, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another powerful tale of love, betrayal, and resilience.